Welcome to the Ebb and Glow podcast. I'm your host, Jenelle Tremblett, and I'm a firm believer that even when life doesn't go as planned, it is taking you exactly where you're meant to be. On this podcast, I'm here to help you finally release control of what you think you want and begin to just trust in the ebbs and flows of life. Each week, I will show you how to build that positive mindset, radiate with self-confidence, and cultivate an unshakable resilience. Let me prove to you that even when life ebbs, you will glow. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Ebb and Glow podcast. I'm your host, Jenelle Tremblett, and as always, I am so happy that you are here this week. Today's episode is one that I was excited about, and I'm excited that it's finally live so that you can listen as well. Today's episode is all about attachment theory and the different styles of attachment that we have in all of our relationships. So if you've ever heard of the popular book Attached, this is what it's all about. And if you've never read it and you don't know much about it, you'll learn a lot about that today. So my guest today is Jessica de Silva. Jessica is a licensed marriage and family therapist and an attachment coach, helping adults end their unhealthy dating patterns and create strong, secure relationships using the attachment theory framework. I came across Jessica when I found her own podcast called Let's Talk Attachments, and I binge listened all of the episodes. At the time, I was in the dating scene and just getting triggered a lot in relationships, and I was like, normally I am a secure attachment style, but dating lately is kind of triggering me a lot and kind of giving me some insecure attachment. So I wanted to understand it a little bit more without having to read the book. And I didn't really want to listen to it on audio either because I knew a lot about it. So I just wanted to hear like someone else talk about it and go through some examples. And I found so much value in Jessica's podcast that I was like, I just got to reach out to this girl and have her on so we can talk about this. So I'm so glad that she said yes because our conversation today is fantastic. So one thing that I learned in this podcast with Jessica is that your attachment style can change. And we get so caught up. Like, as you all know, I'm such an astrology nerd. So sometimes when we do quizzes or sometimes when we get typecasted into things, we stay in that typecast. So it's like my zodiac sign is a Taurus. So I almost like mold myself into being more Taurus instead of just being naturally myself. But the difference with attachment style is it's a lot more flowy. So you could be an anxious avoidant. You could be a fearful. You could be insecure. But Jessica in this episode talks about ways that you can start moving towards a more secure attachment style. And I mean, ultimately, that's the goal, right? We want to be able to self-soothe. We want to be secure in all of our relationships so that they can thrive. So I know you will love today's episode. If you are enjoying it, please make sure to share it with a friend who will also get value. And if you haven't already and you are a big TikTok user, follow the podcast on TikTok at Ebb and Glow Podcast. There's so many clips of the episodes and just like great clips that you'll get a good sense of what the episodes are about. So without further ado, let's get to it and I hope you enjoy it. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jenelle. Happy to be here.
I had to tell the audience how I found you. The way I find podcast guests, I need to start using this method in my dating life where I just seriously go for it and find people in the DMs. But the way I found you is I was going through this relationship, situationship kind of thing. And I was very familiar with the attachment theory framework. And I was like, I wonder what my attachment theory is. Cause it's like my actions in this, I want to call it situationship, is not how I would normally act in other relationships. So I'm like, let me remind myself of all of these attachment theories again. And I like to learn by audio. So I didn't really want to listen to the book on audio, like the classic book, but I'm like, I want like a podcaster to talk about this to me. And so I just typed into Spotify, like attachment theory, like anxious attachment, and your podcast came up and your podcast is literally all about attachment theory. And I said to you when I messaged you, I'm like, did you see a download day where literally someone listened to every single one of your episodes? Because that was me. And I learned so much.
Oh,
so that's how I
so
found
glad
you.
That's so cool. That makes me so happy because that podcast, I'm not just giving information and educating you, but I'm also talking about my own personal story. So it's very vulnerable. So when someone's like, I really liked it, I'm like, okay, you're my person.
I know.
You're my
As podcasters, we can often feel like we're talking into the abyss. And it's like recently I've had a few people find this podcast just through like searching up terms or like seeing someone else share it and them like falling in love with it and finding so much value in it. And yeah, that's how I felt about yours. And it's like when you finally find that person that relates and gets value out of what you're creating, you're like, yeah, this is why I'm doing all of this.
Totally.
I love it. So I want to ask you first, how did you get into studying attachment theory? Was it after you got licensed as a family and marriage therapist?
Yeah. So I studied marriage and family therapy. However, like we learned a little bit about attachment theory, but not enough that it stuck with me. It was only after one of my like last toxic relationships that I started learning more about it. And I was like, whoa, this is how I'm behaving. And this is why. And this is what I can do to change it. There's a way to not feel like this anymore. So it was after grad school and it was after a pretty toxic relationship that I started really diving into it.
I find it's like anything. Once we typecast ourselves, we think that's it. Like you look at astrology, you look at, I don't know, like we were talking about quizzes earlier. Once you like get a quiz and you get the answer, like you think that's who you are. But the nice thing about attachment theory is it's a lot more of a spectrum. So you can be an anxious person, an anxious attachment theory, but there's, as you said, there's so many skills and mechanisms and tactics that you can get back to secure attachment. And I mean, that's the ultimate goal, I guess.
Yeah. So usually when people take that quiz, I actually had to change my quiz. I think it was like 6 months ago or something, because it really, you do fall on a spectrum. So no one is 100% anxious or 100% dismissive or 100% fearful or secure, right? Which is kind of cool to know that there is no level of perfection that we're trying to reach, because there is no such thing as a 100% secure person. So that's kind of comforting to know. But yeah, we all fall on a spectrum. So for me, I grew up with a predominantly fearful avoidant attachment style, but I have a lot of anxious tendencies. And then through experiences in adulthood, I became a little bit more avoidant, and now I'm becoming more secure. So it's so multi-dimensional.
Do you find, because I find this for myself, I'm certain attachment styles depending on the relationship in my life. So for family, avoidant. Friendships and stuff, probably secure. And actual romantic relationships, depending on the person. And I don't know why that is. Like, I don't know if dating certain people have triggered maybe some more insecurities in me than normal, but generally I'm a secure person. But yeah, I don't know, maybe dating the wrong person. Who knows? You tell me.
Yeah. So that's actually a really common question. People are like, well, my attachment style with my partner is so different than how I experience love or how I relate with a friend or a family member. So just to kind of give everyone some context of what we're even talking about.
Please.
So attachment theory was pioneered by John Bowlby back in the 1960s, but him and his research team, they basically studied the relationships and bonds between caregiver and child. And what they discovered is that there's 4 different ways of relating to another or experiencing love. So there's the anxious, preoccupied, there's the dismissive avoidant, there's the fearful avoidant. Another name for fearful avoidant is disorganized attachment. And then there's secure attachment. So it's important to note that all of the attachment styles experience relationship anxiety. We just experience it to different degrees and we respond to it differently. So, and I'll get back to your question. With the anxious attachment styles, when they experience relationship anxiety, they activate. So they will do anything to reestablish that connection, whether it is thinking about the person all the time, calling them, texting them excessively, very just needy, clingy behavior, right? And all they're trying to do is just self-soothe, but they don't do it in a very healthy way. Dismissive avoidance, they deactivate. So when they experience relationship anxiety, they withdraw. They don't even want to deal with it, right? They avoid, they withdraw, they dismiss. Maybe you don't hear from them anymore. Maybe they take a couple days to call you back. Maybe they just totally, lose themselves in work or hobbies or whatever, right? Fearful avoidants have both anxious and avoidant tendencies, which was me. Something I'm
Sounds like a roller coaster for you.
It is such a roller coaster because
it sounds very cat and mouse.
Very much so. Yeah. Because you go back and forth between activating and deactivating, wanting connection. And then once you get it, you're like, bye-bye, I don't need this anymore. And it's just this back and forth. And it just becomes really toxic. And then secure attachments, of course, they, also experience relationship anxiety, but they just have healthier ways of self-soothing, managing their emotions, communicating, getting their needs met. So anyways, going back to your question, because it is how you learn to bond with a specific person or relate with a specific person, your experiences in the past could have been so different with a partner as it was with a friend. Right? Maybe you experience all trauma with a partner, but not so much with friends. Or maybe you experienced a certain level of trauma with a family member, but not so much with partner. So it just depends on what your experiences were.
I find for me, the relationship between maybe myself and a parent or my parents specifically, and maybe my relationship between me and my close friendships, I feel like they're unconditional. So I think that's why I have secure attachment and then worst case scenario, avoidant attachment. But I find in dating and romantic relationships, there's no guarantee. I don't feel it's unconditional. It's very conditional when you're initially dating, or that's what I feel in my head. So I think secure generally with the right person, but worst case, probably anxious.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that you feel anxious usually in romantic dynamics.
If certain things are going to trigger me in a romantic relationship, I can lean into non-secure attachment. So in terms of anxious or I find to not use the terms for me, I find I'm always wondering where it's going, how they feel. I need a little bit more validation. I want to know where their head's at. I want to, not that I need to see them a lot, but I just like want that connection. But like a close friend of mine, I can go a couple of weeks without hearing from them. And I just know they're going to be there. Why? And I feel like maybe a lot of people feel this way. I think it feels like there's more on the line when you're in those romantic relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it looks like in romantic relationships, you tend to activate. So I would be curious to know what your past experience was in romantic relationships specifically, because sounds like there's more of that fear of abandonment, right? Whether it's you don't hear from them, whether, they don't validate you or you don't get the reassurance you want, you activate. Like you want to gain that information to self-soothe.
Instead of just self-soothing on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'd be curious to know what, what your experience was in the past.
I find for me, I've had a lot of past relationships where I've been extremely secure in the relationship and have a lot of my own stuff going on and tend to keep very busy and keep my emotions in check. And a few of those relationships ended up me being cheated on. So I feel like now I'm like almost hyper aware of what's going on to a fault instead of just kind of like doing my own thing and being secure. Where maybe it does come from the abandonment. And I almost have this narrative in my head where it's like, if you're just on your own path and doing your own thing, this is when they kind of step out a little bit. But it has nothing to do with me. I'm smart enough to know that. But there's a bit of a common theme going on there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure.
It almost seems like the common theme or the pieces I'm putting together. It's like, okay, when you're secure, that's when shit happens. But I know I'm smart enough to know that's not true, but I can get down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, because trauma lives in our emotion, right? So emotionally, you're activated. Emotionally, you're afraid. because of what has happened in the past. Okay, you were really hurt. You felt really betrayed. So that trauma kind of gets stored in the body, stored in the emotion. Logically, though, you know better. Logically, you can use reason in these situations. But yeah, so with attachment theory, it really is about correcting that attachment trauma that lives in the emotional experience.
I mean, I learned so much throughout your podcast, and I find one of the things that has helped me the most listening to your podcast when I'm having those periods of feeling the anxious attachment or just like anxious in any type of relationship, whether it's family, romantic, friendship. One of the things I believe you said on one of your podcasts was when you're feeling those ways, say to yourself or journal, what would a secure attachment person do in this scenario? And the moment I say that to myself, I'm like, right. Okay. Do not react this way. Do not kind of cling to some attention and connection and validation. Like, what would a secure attachment style do? And yeah, it's really taught me how to self-soothe a little bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that is my go-to question for everything. I mean, because it really is when you're trying to step into a different version of you, a new version of you, it requires you to embody a new identity. So now I ask myself, okay, what would secure me do? What would secure Jess do in this situation? That question's a game changer.
It's one of those things when you work on yourself and you're doing all this work, the real test is when you're tested.
Yes.
So I haven't been tested just yet. So we'll see if I've done any of the work soon. We'll see if any anxious attachment crap comes up. I have a feeling it won't as much. So we'll see. What about you? I know you've always said on your podcast that you were generally fearful avoidant. So how did that look in practice?
So majority fearful avoidant, basically what that looked like was just so many ups and downs in relationships, that roller coaster type of relationship, real highs and then real lows. And what I realized was, okay, because attachment styles, they tend to get passed down from generation to generation. And I realized, okay, I don't want to end up, my mom is wonderful, like wonderful, wonderful woman. However, I don't want to end up like her in terms of relationships, right? I want a healthy, stable relationship because if you have that healthy, stable relationship, you're going to have a healthy and stable life as well. Our relationships really affect all aspects of our life. And so I was just like, I am ready to heal. Like, I don't want to feel this way anymore. There's so many directions, obviously, that I could go with this. So what did the fearful avoidant look like? And how did I practice kind of becoming more secure?
Yeah, give me a couple scenarios of when the fearful avoidant really was in full force. And I'm sure everyone's going to relate. I mean, me too, probably last month. Who knows?
Oh man. I mean, she comes out a lot. not a lot, but in these like brief little moments, right? And I just kind of have to control and manage the situation. So with the fearful avoidant, you're always thinking about the worst case scenario, right? So when I started becoming secure, like my inner critic was just so loud. You're not good enough. This life isn't for you. You don't deserve a healthy relationship. You've never had that before. Look at your past. Do you think this is possible for you? So it's the inner critic is just so strong and so loud. And so in that process of just allowing a healthy person into my life and maintaining that relationship has been really difficult because I have to pay attention to that trauma response. I have to pay attention to the negativity and kind of correct myself in that experience. So with knowing about attachment styles, I can kind of expect that this is kind of my go-to, where I just think worst case scenario. And then I correct myself in that moment. I'm like, okay, is that totally true? Is it totally true that I'm not good enough for this? Or is this stemming from an insecurity? So knowing my attachment style, I know 100% it's an insecurity from the past. And then I ask myself, okay, how would secure me respond? What would she do? Right? Would she avoid the situation? Would she lash out at her partner? Would she, assume the worst? Or would she just go on with life and just choose to be happy in this moment. And so that question is just incredible. It's challenging the insecure patterns that you're aware of with your attachment style, and then doing the opposite pretty much. Just asking yourself, what would secure me do, and doing that instead.
How would your partners respond to the fearful avoidant behavior?
I want to say, like, I am so grateful for my partner because he is mostly secure with some avoidant tendencies, but because of his security, he doesn't get defensive. So my avoidance still comes out in the sense, like, I will get moody sometimes. It just comes out of nowhere, right? Or I'll just get really short when I say something. Sometimes I'm not nice, and I know it stems from that. And I've had partners in the past that were insecure, and they would get so defensive. And I never felt understood. You know what I mean?
Safe.
Or safe. Exactly. So with him, he's just so great. He just doesn't really respond in a threatening way. He just has a way of, like, de-escalating how I'm feeling, and then life goes on. You know what I mean? There's no fight, which is really great.
One of my recent exes, he's very secure attachment and very just like conflict avoidance in general. So when I would ever get in one of my moods, and Jess, I can be crazy, like crazy, and not crazy. Like, I don't do anything crazy, but I just get so in my head, and I just like go a little neurotic. Like, I'm just a little insane. And what he would always do, that I will plan to tell every future partner, this is how to manage me. What he would do is, when I was being a little insane, he would basically like point it back at me and almost like make fun of me a little bit, and like put it in a witty, humorous way so that I could realize how silly I was being. And that works for me. That's not like a general tactic I'd recommend using, but for me, if you fight back with a little bit of humor and show me how ridiculous I'm being, I crack up laughing, and then the whole situation is diffused. But I mean, that being said, I've probably have left him with a lot of trauma in that relationship, where he probably really is going to be conflict avoidant moving forward. Because I would be like, I'd blow up. So I mean, I've learned from that I don't need to be doing that. But it was just fun, like you said, with your partner, they just don't react, or they know how to mitigate your moods. And that's the ultimate need of any partner.
Oh my God, it's so, so helpful. And I'm glad that you found that out for yourself, what helps you kind of self-soothe in that moment, or what they can do to kind of manage your emotional experience. That's great.
I feel like when we newly date someone, I just want to like give them like a manual, like a handbook, being like, this is how to manage me.
Great.
As a licensed marriage and family therapist, that's not fair of us to do. We need to manage ourselves to be in a healthy relationship.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Learning how to self-soothe, learning what your needs are, how to communicate your needs. That's all to do before a relationship, and definitely learning how to do within a relationship too.
How is your fearful avoidant tendencies coming up lately? Give me a scenario.
Actually,
I'm going to put your partner on blast right now.
In terms of relationship, fearful avoidance, I've been so busy with work, and he has not been working at the moment because he does rope access, and it's just depending on where there's a job and things like that. Anyways, so right now it feels like I am taking a lot of the burden in a lot of ways, which is fine, totally fine. But with the fearful avoidant, because there's so much trauma around, you're taking advantage of me, I'm going to be betrayed at some point, right? That has been surfacing a little bit with this weird dynamic we're in. So I will just get, again, it's assuming the worst case scenario that he's taking advantage of me, right? So when he's watching, he's on the couch and I just finished a session, I'm like, shouldn't you be doing something? Like, it comes from this very, just not a nice place. It's not a nice and understanding place. It's coming from a place of fear
and pressure. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
I wonder if that's going deep, deep, deep down where you're almost worried, like, can I handle it all? Will I
Mhm.
be able to handle the burden if I do have the burden, you know?
Ooh, good point. I love that you took it there too, because with the fearful avoidant as well, we've played this role of taking responsibility for others, right? And I don't want to be in that role anymore, especially as an adult. Like I want it to be a balanced, equal relationship. I don't want to feel like I am holding all of this pressure. So yeah, it is kind of rubbing on that as well.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
anything that isn't balanced, you're gonna be like, oh my God, it scared the hell out of you.
It's crazy how this balance has been such I guess it's definitely a need of mine is what I'm learning. Equality is an essential need for me to feel supported and
Yeah.
safe.
I've always read that two of the worst people together is anxious and avoidant. Why is that?
Mm, they're just the most triggering duo because
Polar
they
opposites, like magnets. They're doing the opposite work, like repelling each other.
Yeah, but talking about balance, right, is, like with the anxious attachments, they are such deep connectors. They're so in tune. Their emotions tend to be all over the place, but they are very connected to their emotions. They allow themselves to feel their emotions and express emotions. Even if it doesn't come out correctly, they still express it, right? With avoidance, it's the opposite. They're so afraid of their emotional world that they just suppress it. So avoidance too, because they aren't really connected emotionally, intellectually, they just got things down, right? They're very logical. They are very independent, individualistic thinkers. So both of them have qualities that they kind of lack within themselves. And so they're attracted to that in the other.
And then when a fight or any traumatic thing happens or disagreement, you would think that they would mirror each other in terms of being able to understand each other and help each other out and benefit from those like areas they lack. But really, no, they add gasoline to the fire.
Totally. Because none of them understand,
Yeah.
because they're so different, they don't know where the other one is coming from,
Yeah.
right?
Even though what they have is what the other needs.
Exactly. Exactly. So they're operating from completely different needs. That's the
Right.
problem. Yeah.
How does that look in practice? Like if someone's newly dating someone, what are some tendencies that they might see in someone that screams anxious
Mhm.
attachment, avoidant attachment, or fearful attachment
That's a
in the
really good.
classic, like newly dating world?
Yeah. Well, I'll give an example actually. So I won't obviously say her name, but I have a client who is currently dating right now, and she wanted to work with me during this process so that she could have more awareness of what is happening in these dynamics. So in her case, she has more fearful avoidant tendencies. So she has both anxious and avoidant within her. But what she noticed with this guy that she's dating is that, whenever she would try to ask him about his personal life, he would not answer it. Like he would just deflect it or kind of just change the subject. And she kept trying to do it a couple of times and he kept deflecting the situation. That is a sign of avoidance. Another thing with that, and my boyfriend did the same thing. He has some avoidant tendencies. In the beginning, it was hard to get through.
They just don't want people to really understand them or get close to them, I guess.
No, not
Or
in the
they're
beginning.
fearful of that a little bit, of what that
Yeah,
means.
very rigid boundaries around their
Mm.
internal world. Yeah. Then with the anxious attachment style, you know, they're there. Like you call, they're going to answer it. They want to hang out with you. They're probably saying, we went on a date yesterday. Let's hang out tomorrow. Like, what are your plans? Right. Like you sense that they want to be with you. They want to connect with you and spend time with you.
So to use common negative connotations. So for someone anxious avoidant, we'll call them clingy, needy. What else? Like that's
So
kind of the terms, right?
yeah. So
Each one has pros and cons and like
yeah,
positive connotations and negative connotations.
exactly. Yeah. So with the anxious attachments, because they're so activated, they do end up being very clingy and needy because they want that connection for validation. They just need that constant validation. And it looks like being very clingy, being very needy. With a dismissive avoidant, I mean, just
cold,
rigid,
rigid, closed-minded, like not open. Yeah.
Not very open. I've had a lot of avoidant clients who are super passionate about what they do, and they want a partner who is also passionate about what they do, because if you are passionate about what you do, you're not going to put so much focus or all your focus on the relationship, right?
Right.
So that's really important for them.
Someone that's really head into their career, maybe.
Yeah, because it goes to show that you're not going to be so needy of them or so dependent of the relationship.
Yeah. Like when you look at your week in review, they're not a huge piece of the pie that you need.
Right. Less responsibility. That's what they want.
That almost seems more toxic than the anxious attachment.
They can all be toxic.
Yeah. Fair. But can secure attachment be toxic?
No, I mean,
no.
If you're predominantly secure, again, because remember, we all fall on that spectrum. However, if you are dating, studies have shown that if you do date, someone who is very insecure, that can change their attachment style too. So no one's totally safe. No secure person is safe. Trauma can just do a number to us. So it just depends.
We've talked heavily about relationships, obviously, but you've told me that other areas of your life where you've ebbed are also finances and making decisions. So what's that all about?
Yeah. So here's the thing. There's not a lot of research actually that talks about how attachment styles affects other aspects of your life. But from personal experience, I have noticed that the more secure I become in myself, I am just more of a risk taker in terms of going after my goals, believing in myself, knowing that I can improve, knowing that I can make more money. I've just become a lot more confident. And it's obviously affected different areas of my life, which has been really good.
Talk to me about the decision making. One of my biggest pet peeves in a person is when they can't make a decision. So tell me.
So what do you mean by that?
When people do the dance of like two ways, all ways, it kind of annoys me. When people cannot just like decide on something with like their life or career, or they're kind of always just like humming and hawing, where it's like, yeah, like I want to live somewhere else, but I don't know this, that, and this. And I'm like, just do something, pack the bag, book the trip. But that's how I operate. But I understand, and I empathize with people who can't make decisions as quick. But why? Please explain it to me. Where does it come from?
I know, as you say that, so I'm also very spiritual as well.
Okay. Me too.
So,
yeah.
As you said that, I was just thinking of like air sign, like an air sign.
We talked about this. Are you arrogant?
I am an air sign. Very much like, and then also factoring in my attachment style too, that back and forth. So I have struggled with decision making, but what has helped with that though, so many different factors that can contribute to one's very wishy-washy or uncertain.
But is it because you don't want to make the wrong decision, or okay, so you're like and you just don't want to plant your feet somewhere?
Totally. It's anxiety. It's like, I'm just going to avoid making a decision because I'm scared of where directions are going to take me.
Do you watch Vanderpump Rules, the reality show?
Know about it because that's in Los Angeles, right?
Yeah. So one of the main guys, Tom Schwartz, he drives me insane because he's literally the most passive, indecisive person, but he's so sweet too. So you still love him. But I'm like, holy crap, just like make a decision, like pick a side. But he's not. He's very like Libra energy. You know what I mean? Harmonious,
Yeah. And I would, whenever, because I was the most indecisive person, and I would always call friends and depend on friends to help me make decisions. And I was just like, Jessica, I'm not doing that anymore. I have to be independent in my decisions. Even if I make the wrong decision, at least I'm being assertive. So coming from that secure self-identity, she is assertive, right? She is assertive. She's going to make a decision. She's going to make it happen. So that has been helping a lot in that regard.
So, but what kind of modalities and things have you done to sway yourself back to secure attachment and being able to make decisions better and being able to have healthier communication styles in relationships? Like, what have you done?
So my favorite therapeutic approaches are CBT, so cognitive behavioral therapy, which is really helpful for depression, anxiety, like talk about not making decisions. That really falls into both of those categories. That's where the challenging the thoughts comes from and making a different decision, right?
Give me an example.
So
Is it like proof points almost?
I'm not sure. So with
Yeah.
CBT, considering like the cognitive behavioral triangle, so recognizing that there's a trigger, right? The trigger is going to lead you to have a certain thought. The thought is going to cause you to feel something. That feeling is going to cause you to act in a certain way. But those three components can work interchangeably. So you can just, something can happen and you just feel something in your body, which then causes you to maybe do something. And then that action causes you to have all these thoughts about what you did. So I don't know, is that similar to?
No. So I clearly don't know much about CBT. So tell me more, 'cause I know nothing clearly.
I mean, girl, I love CBT. It is in my day-to-day. What that looks like is paying attention to my thoughts, my feelings, and my actions, and figuring out what the pattern, right? Like what trigger happened that caused this experience.
Okay. So
and then
feelings, thoughts, and actions. Okay.
Yeah, they work interchangeably, right?
Okay.
Something could happen, you just impulsively act, which then causes you to like feel really shitty about yourself, which then causes all of these thoughts. See, you're not good enough. See, this is what happens. So those three components.
That's my pathway.
Yeah.
React.
Yeah. And it depends for everyone. Some people are feelers. Some people are more thinkers. Some people are more just, impulsively taking action on the stuff. So anyway, CBT has been wonderful for that.
And is it more so just recognizing in like something happening and before you react or before you let your thoughts spiral or before you like shame yourself for the feelings, it's more just like understanding the web.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah. So like the other day something happened. It was a feeling. Something happened and it just took over my body. It felt really shitty in my body. And then I had all these thoughts of see, da 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 da. And I kind of had to sit there for a while. It took a couple hours of me just kind of sitting with what was happening. And then when I felt more composed, and we had more energy, right? I asked myself, okay, I know what insecure me would do in this moment. What would secure me? How would she act? How would she behave? So I behaved differently, which then changed that entire experience.
The power of just like recognizing what's happening in ourselves, recognizing what the feelings mean and not putting too much meaning on them. For me, when I can be emotional or like I can feel it in my body, whether it's the anxiousness or the embarrassment very quickly. And then, I can spiral. I can make top rated movies based on the thoughts and stories in my head. Like it's nuts. Please, someone buy the rights to this movie I'm playing.
But you know what, Jenelle? It's so good to hear you say that. And obviously in my profession, I get to hear what is actually happening within people. And it has helped humanize all of us because we all like, and that's the thing too, when you're becoming more secure, it's not about getting rid of those thoughts. Those thoughts are always going to be there. And I'm telling you, like if you had a lot of trauma, unfortunately, your thoughts are just not going to be very pleasant sometimes, right? But it's how you respond to those emotional experiences that make you a better version of yourself.
You've also done what you're calling self-reparenting work. What is that?
Yeah, so that's like my go-to practice for self-love. It's just considering the fact that none of us really had the perfect parents, right? So self-reparenting is basically how do you parent yourself as an adult? So how do you be that ideal mom that you've needed? And how do you be the ideal father figure that you needed? So like in my business, my masculine comes in a lot. My inner father comes in a lot, right? Where she's just like, Jess, okay, let's do this. Let's make this happen. It's very action oriented. It's how I set boundaries. It's how I advocate for myself and speak up. Now, when I reparent myself with the mom, it's more so, okay, if I make a mistake, how can I be nice to myself? How can I speak to myself in a loving way? My mom, my inner mom, tells me to rest, tells me to take a break, tells me to go outside and walk and be in nature, hug my dog, or love my boyfriend. Like there's just a different energy and element with both.
It's very interesting. I'm like kind of, I won't like say it on here because I do need to do some reflecting, but my parents weren't traditional masculine and feminine. It was very like 50-50, like a blend in both of them. So I don't have the traditional upbringing. So I'm going to have to do some reflections and like, yeah, how do I reparent myself? But I find a lot of people, like even in the online world, when they speak about their traumas, they almost put all of the blame on like their upbringing and parents. And it's like, yeah, sure. Yeah. But what are you going to do about it?
Totally.
Yeah. Like, are you just going to sit in that and that's going to be your narrative for the rest of your life? Or are you going to recognize that, say, yeah, you did the best you could and move forward with that?
Yeah, that's actually why I left therapy and went into coaching. It was just so, with therapy, you can have a client for years and years and years. And I had a lot of clients that just came every week and just wanted to talk about the same things. And I just don't operate that way. It pissed me off so much.
Where you would think, yeah, I gave you the tools last week. Did you do anything with them?
I'm not going to.
But obviously it's a lot deeper than that.
Yeah.
But your personality and like your emotional well-being couldn't handle it.
No,
I wouldn't be able to either.
It wasn't for me. I'm much more solution focused, action oriented. So coaching is more of that like assertive kind of approach. Yeah.
Funny. How long have you been doing coaching? And is it like, what specific coaching do you do?
So I've been doing coaching for about 3 years, and I was doing therapy for about 3 years before that, which included doing some therapy in grad school as well, because you have to gain hours and stuff. But I kind of just jumped into coaching after a few years. I always kind of focused more on relationship coaching, but right now I consider myself an attachment coach. So I'm specifically helping people who already know about attachment styles. They have an idea of what their attachment style is and the challenges that's bringing them into their, single life or their relationship. And I basically help them understand different aspects of their attachment styles, their patterns, and teaching them therapeutic tools to begin cultivating that secure attachment.
Do you find when you're coaching, it's like anything, like I find when I give some advice to my friends, I'm like, damn, I could take that for myself. I'm like, why don't I use that one for me? Do you find when you're like working through scenarios with your clients, you're like, damn, that came up for me last week. Would have loved to do it that way.
Jenelle, your questions are very like hitting.
It's like gold. I live in it all day.
It's my life literally. And I've been working on how do I set boundaries around this? But I love it. It's what I do. It's how I live. But yeah, that's such a good question. It just feels so enmeshed in what I like I
would never know when to turn it off if I were you.
Yeah, which is it. The thing though, it's so helpful because it's through story and connection that I think my clients get so much out of the sessions, right? Because we're like in it together, that they feel really supported. It just never turns off though. So I don't, it's always
But
on.
I mean, if you love what you do, then it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. But we always have to set some boundaries too, right? Like, hey, you got to turn it off. You got to turn it.
I love to turn it off. Love to turn it off. And what are some wins that some of your clients are having?
Let's see. Some wins that clients are having at the moment. So I do like an 8 to 10 week coaching package. So there's there's just so many different phases, but really the wins are in changing the actions, right? It's the first couple sessions, it's understanding the patterns, right? So there's a lot of like aha moments. It could be really triggering for some people, but then moving, forward, it's wow, I didn't react the way I did, or wow, I was able to say this differently, or wow, I was able to speak up for myself and they actually listened to my request. So it's like the small changes. It's the little celebrations here and there that eventually really begin changing you as a person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure through your coaching programs, some people are creating very beautiful relationships, which I mean is the ultimate goal.
Yeah, there's actually this one lady, I want to say she was like in her late 40s or something, had a daughter. And when she first came to me, she was just really unsure if she was going to find a guy. Because, first of all, dating world is just like difficult and defeating, right? A lot of the time. And so here she is entering that in her late 40s, just feeling really defeated, even going into it by the circumstances, and then having a daughter and, wanting to make sure that you're not just inviting any person into your life. But anyways, yeah, I think that was like a year ago or something, but now she's on my Instagram and she'll like tag her partner on my posts and stuff so they can help each other, support each
I love that.
other. I know. And he seems like a wonderful guy.
I bet he's so sweet.
Yeah. So it's possible. Like it is, you just have to get clear on yourself, what your needs are, what you want, and really learning how to communicate and find a partner who's compatible with your needs.
I think an anxious person and an avoidant person could absolutely have a beautiful relationship if they're open to learning about each other. Or if they're open to, yeah, these are my reactions, but let's get curious about them. Let's work through them. It doesn't matter how compatible you are. If someone's not willing to work through the ups and downs with you,
Yeah.
it's never going to work.
No.
We are very human. Like it's extremely human.
Your responsibility to save or fix anybody.
No.
That's not to carry. Yeah, I have a client also who's dismissive avoidant. His partner is very anxious and he wanted to better himself and he wanted to be a better partner. And we've been working together and they've been improving so much as a couple. So yeah, it can totally work. You just have to have the awareness and the willingness to meet your partner's needs and compromise and all that relationship stuff.
I mean, the ultimate word of a relationship is compromise.
Yeah.
I don't like that word. I'm learning to like it. Jess, I don't want to hold you on for too much longer, but during your journey of going from fearful avoidant to secure attachment, what's one thing that has surprised you about yourself?
What has surprised me about myself? That we're flexible and that we're capable, just that I can have this much compassion and understanding for myself, I think. Yeah.
If we start with that, we could achieve a lot of things.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Not being hard on yourself is so relieving, right?
But so hard not to be hard on ourselves.
Right. Right. And another thing too with that is, when you hold so much expectation of yourself to do it right, get it right, right? It's like that inner critic. When you can kind of just do life the best you can without perfection, you're just doing it and you realize, whoa, I could create all of this by not being perfect. Cool. Like, I'm just going to keep doing it because this feels good.
Any last words of advice for anyone experiencing any type of attachment disorganization in their lives?
Yeah. Just know that you can change, that you're not stuck in these ways of operating, and there's so much help out there. Learn about your attachment style, really be conscious and aware of your patterns, and seek out ways, different therapeutic approaches, whether it's through a therapist, whether it's through your own. Social media has tons of information now. You can come to my website, social media accounts, find ways on how to manage what you're experiencing. Because remember, it's not about what is happening internally, it's how you respond to it that ends up correcting those behaviors and helping you become your most secure self. So have compassion for yourself in this process too.
Please, please. Jess, I know how much value I've gotten from your podcast in learning about attachment theory. So please plug your podcast, plug your website, plug your coaching program so that everyone can find you after this.
Yeah, of course. Podcast is Let's Talk Attachments. You can find that on iTunes, Spotify. My website is jessicadasilvacoaching.com. You can take the free attachment style quiz on there. If you have an anxious attachment style, I have an amazing course that guides you through my coaching framework in terms of, helping you develop a secure attachment style. It's called My Secure Self Academy for the Anxious Attachment Style. And if you want more support, you can work with me one-on-one. So all of that is on my website, jessicadasilvacoaching.com.
Jess, thank you so much. I was a little nervous reaching out to you when I first reached out, but I'm like, no, I love this girl. I've loved her podcast. I want to talk about this stuff. So I'm so glad that you agreed and came on here and chatted with me. So thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity, Jenelle.
Did you know that I'm not only a podcast host, but in my full-time career, I am a Toronto-based real estate agent. In 2021, I closed 100 deals. Yes, you heard that correctly, 100. So if you or someone you know is a busy professional looking to get into the Toronto real estate market and looking to work with a realtor who values your time, make sure to reach out to me and let's get connected. And in the meantime, we'll see you here back next week.